Is it possible to take the worst day of your life and make it your best day? This is the question I had to wrestle with when I encountered this recent interview with Tony Robbins. So today I want us to look at how one act of kindness reshaped Tony's life. And I'm telling you, 3 questions we need to ask in every situation. And finally, we're going to see the profound lesson for us, for you and for me, discovering our own purpose and mission in life. You know, on this channel, we're all about moving people from lazy faith to living hope. And I love the challenge that Tony gives in the end. But first, let's just see how it all started.
And then probably what changed my life the most, though, is my forefather especially made it clear no one gives a damn about anybody else. We lived in what I thought was an upper class community or city, but we were on the other side of the tracks. It was lower middle class. We were, literally right by the railroad tracks where the worst of the worst lived, so to speak. And so we're kind of looked down on. And so it really looked like nobody cares. My mom, she drank alcohol and took prescription drugs. And we had no money, no food. And then the thing that changed my whole life was a knock on the door on Thanksgiving. There was this tall guy standing there with 2 bags of groceries and an uncooked frozen turkey in a pan. And my dad saw this man. He said, "We don't take charity." And he went and slammed the door on the guy. But the man had leaned in because of the groceries and it hit his shoulder and it bounced off, which made my dad even madder. And they said, sir, he said, "Somebody knows you're having a tough time. Everyone has tough times. They want you to have this food for your family for Thanksgiving." He goes, "I'm just the delivery guy." And my father said, "We don't take charity." And he pushed the door again. But this time, because the guy's leaning, his foot now stepped in. It hit his foot and bounced off. And then now my dad's getting more fired up. And I'm standing looking at this whole thing, and it's like a car crash happening. And the guy said something to my dad. I thought my dad was going to punch him in the face. He didn't say it meanly. He said, "Sir," he said, he saw me, he said, "Don't make your family, suffer because of your ego." And I can still see it like yesterday. My dad's veins on both sides of his neck were just pumping and he's red as can be. And then he just dropped his shoulders. He took the groceries. He slammed it on the table and he slammed the door and he never even said thank you.
I don't know if many of us can relate fully to Tony's story, but there are probably other moments in your life, right, that you can look back and see the stress. Maybe it was because of things in you. Maybe you saw it in your parents or other people in your life. Sometimes it does take us looking back just to see how profound the impact of something in our life really was. And I do believe that God does comfort the brokenhearted, right? When the tragic things happen, when difficulties come. And I know that there are a lot of injustices in the world, but I want you to see what happens next, right? I want you to see what Tony learned from this and the 3 questions that he tells everyone to ask, no matter what the situation is, no matter what's happening to them, because it's going to drive some of the biggest decisions in our life. Let's watch it together.
It took me maybe a decade to eventually figure it out. It became a very useful distinction for me about how he and I process that day differently, because I believe there's 3 decisions you make every moment of your life. You're making them right now if you're listening to me, and so is your audience. The first one is, what are you going to focus on? You're going to be focused on what happened yesterday, what you're going to have for lunch, what I'm saying, how it relates to you. There are millions of things you can focus on. But you don't experience life. You experience the life you focus on. If you don't control your focus, you react. And that day, my dad's focus was on the fact he did not fed his family. It wasn't hard to figure out. He said it over and over again after he slammed the door. And my focus was, wow, there's food. What a concept. I was excited. But the second decision you make every moment, the minute you focus on something, your brain has to figure out, what does this mean? Is this the end or the beginning? Is this person dissing me? Are they challenging me? Are they coaching me? Are they loving me? And whatever meaning you give it produces emotion. And out of that emotion, you make the third decision, what am I going to do? And that day, I know the meaning my dad did. It wasn't just that he didn't feed his family. It's that he was worthless. I can't even feed my family. And he muttered all this stuff continuously. But I took that as stranger's care. It completely violated everything I had experienced in my life up until that point. And my brain was like, if a stranger doesn't even want credit for this, and they fed my family on Thanksgiving, I got to care about strangers.
I want us to take a look at those 3 questions, 3 decisions really that we all make in life. But I want to look at it through the lens of for you and for me, because this is Tony's story, but I want us to kind of personalize it, right? Number 1, what are we going to focus on? What are we going to focus on? And I love that he says you don't experience life, you experience the life you focus on. So no matter whether it's mountaintop moments or valleys, What are some of the things that you're focused on that you're experiencing? This is where a lot of people struggle because they focus on the fact that maybe they were the victim. They were the victim of being wrong. They were the victim of injustice. They were the victim of being of a tragedy. This is the story of Tony's dad. And honestly, this is the story of a lot of folks who just focus on the wrong things. And I look at this and go, we're called to a scriptural focus. The writer of Hebrews says, he tells us to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, right? That's part of helping us understand what is our focus supposed to be. Keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. Why? Because he says he's the author and perfecter of our faith. He's the finisher of our faith. He's the one who helps not only take us from the beginning, initiates it, but he helps bring it through our life as well. All right. Number two, what does it mean? We're always trying to determine, right, what does something mean, right? The things that are happening to us. And again, I don't want us to get lost in that victim mentality. I don't want us to keep our eyes fixed on Christ. But no matter what's happening in our life, God does have something he wants us to learn, right? So what does it mean for us? And as we process those things, I really do believe this is where the Holy Spirit and going to Scripture helps us process what's happening in our life and what does it mean for us? What can it mean for us? Because it said, like you said, it drives the emotion and it leads us to what am I going to do about it, right? So once we get that, what does it mean? Number three says, what am I going to do? And honestly, this really comes back to the idea of grace, right? Not just mission, because we're going to talk about that in a minute, but the initial response to a lot of things really is, and we're called to experience and express grace. Matter of fact, Paul writes to the church in the Colossians. He writes this. He says, since God chose you to be the holy people that he loves, clothe yourself with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. He says, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember that the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. And verse 14 says, above all, clothe yourself with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony. I love this last challenge. Let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. I think for all of us, even with those three questions, what are we focused on? That's a huge understanding of where our eyes are fixed. Number two, what does it mean? How are we going to process the meaning of it? And as it moves us to what are we going to do, I do think it starts with grace. Just understand, I think it starts with a predetermined life that I'm going to extend grace and love and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience. I just believe this is what he means by let the peace that comes from Christ rule in our hearts. But we also know that it's going to call us towards purpose, right? It's going to call us to take action. And this is what I love about Tony's story is it called him to take action. Even though it was just a few years later, I want you to see what happens.
And so what I decided to do is someday I'm going to do this for others. And so when I was 17, I went out and I didn't have a lot of money, but I was doing okay. And I went to a grocery store and I told the manager what happened in my life. And I said, I want to feed 2 families. Help me out. Give me a discount. I had the most enjoyable shopping. I took 2 shopping carts and just filled it up for 2 families. And then I called this church and I said, who do you know that needs help but won't ask for it, won't come for it? And they gave me 2 families' names. And so I wrote a little note. I just put, this is a gift from a friend. Everyone has tough times. I hope you have a beautiful Thanksgiving. And someday, if you can, pay this forward. I didn't use the word pay it forward. I said, do this for someone else. But now you look at us, pay it forward. And I put, love a friend. And then I realized I was going to the barrio area of the city. And I was like, maybe they don't speak English. So I had a friend of mine write in Spanish on the back. So I figured I could flip it over. And the first house I went to is a little tiny place. I knock on the door and this woman about this tall, Hispanic woman, sees me and sees the food and screams and then grabs my head and pulls it down and starts kissing me on the cheek. I said, no, delivery boy. And she said, and I pulled out the note and I flipped it over in Spanish and she read it and then she started to cry and she goes, and she started getting me kissing. I said, no, delivery boy. She goes, no, gift of God. And I'm trying not to cry. I'm just like, I feel it like it was yesterday still. And so, the door opened. It's a tiny little place, the size of your kitchen here. And we bottled this food in, and then it was time to go. And the father had left them, I found out later, 4 days before Thanksgiving with no money and no food. And I'm looking through the mirror and I just started crying uncontrollably. And I'm like, why am I crying so bad? This is such a beautiful moment. And then I just realized, my worst day of my life was really my best day. That the day that was the most painful to me, because that father is the one he adopted me. I carry his name. That I wouldn't be there that day. I'm a good human being, but would I work as hard as I worked to feed other people? I mean, next year I did 4, then 8, then 12. Then I had a little company. I got my employees involved. Then I got to 1 million people, 2 million people. And then about 12 years ago, I decided I want to feed 1 billion meals here in the United States in 10 years. And so it's grown and grown and grown, all from not being fed. And so I see it as a blessing. I always try to help people say, how could you turn your worst day into your best day? That's when life is really magical.
This is when the magic happens, right? I love his statement of the idea of his worst day becoming his best day. There are so many things I could comment on in his story, right? But here's the thing that I see. Anyone can do anything to serve others, right? Anyone can do anything to serve others. It does not take that much for us to extend ourselves to be in service to others. I love that he was 17 years old. He was 17 years old and did this for 2 families. I also love that he called a church, right? We get those calls all the time. I'm a pastor at this local church, and we get calls around the holidays. Hey, are there people that we can help? And thank goodness we work with great local nonprofits who are already on the front lines doing incredible work. And we love to funnel people their way. Like, yes, we got people, and we connect you to the people who are serving those people already, in addition to our church family. But let me ask you this question. Let me just ask you this question, because I want to know if you believe it. Is it possible to take the worst day and make it your best day, right? Look, I've heard so many stories. People have had some horrible, tragic things happen to them in their life, true injustices. But I've also seen God use those moments, right? He wastes nothing to serve others and to help other people. Maybe they're in the same circumstances. Maybe it's to help pour into the next generation so they don't find themselves in similar situations in life. And it's not a one-time thing. This is the part that I just love about the story. It's not a one-time thing. Right? I mean, Tony shared the story like it happened yesterday, and it was almost 50 years ago. He's maybe 66 years old. 50 years ago this happened, and he's feeling the emotion like it happened yesterday. It motivated him not just to feed those 2 families, but to do it every single year, right? Now he wants to feed 1 billion people through his organization over the next 10 years. I mean, come on. And look, this only happens when we discover our purpose. This only happens when we answer those 3 questions, and we're motivated not just by grace with others, but we're motivated to do the things that God's called us to do. And this is where we have to find our purpose. We have to find our why. And I want to just take this minute to, again, this isn't the end of the interview, but I want you to hear, he very quickly tells his why for everything that he does.
I hate suffering. I've suffered myself, and so I hate to see anybody suffer. And so I'm unbelievably driven to end suffering where I can to help anyone do that, whether it be hunger or emotional hunger or depression or sadness or a relationship I don't know what it is. I love human beings. I hate suffering, and I love to see when somebody awakens to who they are. And we all are so much more than we ever, perceive ourselves to be. I don't care how good a person you are. I don't care how spiritual or religious you are. I don't care how smart you are, how rich you think you are. Every human being is going to go through extreme stress multiple times in their life. And the real question is, what are you going to do with it? And the first thing is, if you're going through hell, keep going. But if you keep going, you discover, number one, how strong you really are. Because if you don't give up, you'll discover who you are. Everyone gets called on the journey. Most people try to resist it. But that journey, that's what the call is. It's a call to grow. So I'm big on change your story, change your life.
Man, I love that. Change your story, change your life. Listen, I recently wrote a book, and I think at the time of this recording, it's available for pre-order, but it's going to be available in the next month, so hopefully you'll see it. Gifted on Purpose for Purpose. I'll put the link below if it's something you're interested in. But here's what I know. And again, this is the mission of this channel, right? To take us from lazy faith to living hope. And one of the single best ways to do this is to discover your why, to discover your purpose, that God has a plan for your life, that He has gifted you, not just accidentally. You're not just accidentally fumbled together. Like you've got purpose in your life. He's got a mission, not just for who He wants you to be, but for the good that He's calling you to do in your life. So here's what I want you to do. Okay. I want you to drop in the comments. I want you to drop in the comments below your why. What is it? Right? What gets you up in the morning? What gives you purpose in your life? And I want you to share it with others, right? Let it be something that encourages and inspires you. And maybe you need to look through some of these comments. You need to be inspired and encouraged that you have a why, that you've been gifted on purpose for a purpose. And I'll modify Tony's last statement with my last statement. Why don't we let God change your story, right? If God changes your story, I promise you, it will change your life.